Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm here with Shaun Taylor, a retired Tier 1 Special Operator with Joint Task Force 2, and we're going to be talking about perseverance. I can't think of anybody else who's gone through more than somebody who's been pushed through the Special Forces pipeline. Shaun, can you name a time in your life when you were pushed to your absolute limit and had to dig down deep?
Yeah, sure. There's so many times that I've had to dig deep or be pushed to my limit that it's actually probably a new hobby of mine that I just love being pushed to new extremes to better understand myself. And so I think that that's an interesting point that I'd like to ensure everyone out there understands is the more that you seek difficulty, hardship, adversity, the more that you try to explore the edges of your human existence, the more that you will become comfortable with it. I'm at a point in my life now where through the special operations lifestyle that I lived and further careers that I've been involved in, the more you break your own borders or your own barriers or your own edges, the more complete of a human that you become, the more that you learn that it's okay to push into these kind of gritty, tough, challenging moments that, quite frankly, are the moments that teach you the most about what it is to be a human being. So perseverance for me, from the definition that I quickly looked up, which is persistence is doing something despite difficulty or delay in achieving success, I would simply look at life as the timeline and difficulty as the goal that everyone should be seeking on the regular to better understand who they are as a complete human being.
With some of the kind of the modern mindset of people are a little bit too afraid to embrace that grit and hardness to maybe expose who they are.
I think that's a real good point, and I think that you're onto something there. And I believe that everyone is capable of greatness. Everyone is capable of more excellence than they can comprehend right now if they aren't in the constant pursuit of excellence. One of the mottos within CANSOFCOM, or Canadian Special Operations Command, is the relentless pursuit of excellence. In Tier 1 Special Operations or Joint Task Force 2, our Tier 1 unit here in Canada, our motto is facta non verba, which is deeds, not words. One of the other mottos that gets thrown around a lot is the relentless pursuit of excellence. Now, when you combine those two things, relentlessly pursuing excellence in deeds, not words, you'll find that life becomes a lot more accomplished because action is simply doing, but deeds are creating results. By its very definition, a deed is a result. And so by aimlessly pursuing action, you don't always get the results that you deserve. But by pursuing deeds, you'll always get what you deserve because you're chasing the outcome. You're not just chasing the action.
Thought on it. And I think some people were a little too scared to get deep within ourselves. Do you believe that perseverance can be really amped up if you can have a bit of a sense of humor or be able to not take the situation so seriously where you're like, all right, look, because I feel like if people can't kind of laugh at themselves when they get broken down with these difficult tasks, they can't rise up. They're like, oh, I suck and now I'm done, right? We're like that looking at yourself going, yeah, I ate it today. Here's the new path. Let's go. How important do you think is humor in overcoming obstacles?
Well, I think it's so important that it's kind of one of the obligated personality traits for someone to be in Tier 1 Special Operations. You've got to have a sense of humor, but not a sense of humor that you're now a stand-up comedian. It's a sense of humor that in the face of adversity, you can kind of give it a wry smile or give it a little bit of a sneer, or you can give it a little bit of, is that all you got? You've got to be able to take the punches, roll with them, and kind of laugh at them to some degree. That doesn't mean like a maniacal laugh where you're just laughing into the wind with a pile of nonsense. It means that you've just got to face the difficulty that's immediately in front of you and not treat it like it's the end of the world, but not turn it into a stand-up comedy act either. There's a certain vibe when tough times appear or when things get difficult. There's a certain vibe within people who know how to play the game right from the sense of a sense of humor, where it's kind of called black humor or dark humor, or it's a humor that is deflects from the moment while still appreciating the moment. So it's a workaround for how tough the time is that's immediately in front of you. It's a workaround that you acknowledge it and kind of make light of it, but it's not a joking matter, as it were. So no matter how tough things get, pretty quickly within tier one, guys will look at each other and be straight onto the dark humor within seconds.
With the law enforcement and, all the first responders and stuff like that, I think it's needed. If you can't joke and kind of deal with death, and especially how some of them deal with it, and then like pointy end that you guys are at, there has to be that way where you probably break. I mean, the pressure between your training and operations. Training been so intense that by the time you get into an operation, a little more, I'm going to say, manageable? Or is the real world such a beast that you can train as hard as you want, but all bets are off once it comes to going down to once you're on the two-way range?
So I feel really strongly about this subject, so strongly that I took it into my civilian world, or as a veteran, into my future careers. I had a saying that was along these lines: train in peace so that you don't have to bleed in war, or bleed in peace so that you don't have to bleed in war, depending on who I was delivering the message to. When I was a high performance race coach for 15 years, I only coached civilians, of course, and from all over the world, hundreds. And most of them were ultra endurance racers, predominantly 24-hour solo mountain bike racing. So I've said to many people out there that are 24-hour solo racers, you're gonna bleed in training, because when race day comes, you're gonna thank me that race was easier than you expected. I wanted training to be harder than the race. I wanted them to be so prepared that the race not was disappointingly easy, but it was a race where they could demonstrate the fullness of their potential without feeling like the stresses of the moment were constraining them from their magnificence. Now that's quite a mouthful, but in effect, what I'm saying is I wanted to put them on the start line so well prepared that they just got to be an artist in the moment rather than trying to figure out how to finger paint. They got to go do a Mona Lisa in their race because they had all of the tools and they used all of them so much that this was now their blank canvas moment where they had the liberty to do whatever they wanted. So I put the screws to everyone in training. They bled in training for war on race day that they then got to enjoy themselves.
What daily habit do you think contributes to your success?
So one of the things that I was taught early in my military career was producing results. And so in order to produce results, again, it can be on a short timeline or a long timeline, but ultimately it always turns into a perseverance game. Results, even if it's only in a 24-hour cycle, a 24-hour cycle can feel like a year, depending on the circumstances, or a year can feel like only a week, depending on the circumstances. And so when times get tough and you need results, it requires perseverance. And to me, perseverance is this: you got to be gritty. So you got to be able to face whatever adversity is coming your way, and no quit attitude. The opposite of perseverance is quitting. So you either persevere or you quit. And I can assure you that very early in my career, I was taught a no quit attitude. And I think that a no quit attitude is a more important focus than getting gritty, because by not quitting, you'll eventually get gritty. But a lot of people quit way too fast when they've got a lot more in the bank. They've got a lot more juice to give. They've got a lot more time that they could have stayed in the game. And why do they quit early or prematurely? Why don't they persevere? I feel that it's because their why isn't strong enough. They don't know why they're there. They don't know why they shouldn't quit. They don't know why they showed up to the start line. They don't know why they're in a program like yours. And so if someone's willing to quit in your program a week from now, it's probably because they didn't sit down and ask themselves the why of the moment, the importance of what they're doing. If what you're doing is important enough, you'll never quit, ever. You'll get uncomfortable. You might bleed, you might sweat, you might cry, but you won't quit if the why is important enough.
Through all the difficulties and stuff like that of the courses that you've done, what is like one course or training or one kind of thing you're like, I can't believe I'm getting paid right now to do something this awesome and cool? Like those little ice cream moments in life when you're like, oh, this is so delicious. I'm being paid to do this.
Yeah, there's quite a few moments, but I think I'm going to give a general category, and I call them the Matrix moments. And so, the scene in the Matrix where it's like bullet time, where everything slows down into super slow motion, and Neo's leaning back and he's ducking bullets as they're flying by him. Those Matrix moments for me, if I could buy a dozen of those today, I'd be putting down my credit card and buying a dozen of those moments, because Matrix time is magic. It's where it's things that are so extraordinary or out of the ordinary moments that you almost have to pinch yourself and think, is this happening? But then you've got the skill stack to slow time down, that time dilation ability to take 3 seconds and stretch them out to 30 seconds because you process so fast, time dilation. Those almost insane moments that are slowed down so much where you can kind of look around and think, is anyone else seeing this? Is anyone else feeling what I'm feeling right now? This is crazy, right? So I've had quite a few of those moments. Again, Matrix moments. And I'll just give you an example, and there's many of them, and it's not too wild, but it's interesting enough that it'll make my point. I do recall a moment, it's the one I'm picturing in my mind's eye right now, coming off of a helicopter that was almost landing on top of a building. And as the helicopter was on a 45-degree approach, hard braking, some of us were on Kern mantle rope or on rappel ropes, and we basically jumped off the skid and we were frozen in midair on a 45-degree angle with the bird as we approached the roof. And so as he went to a full stop, I do recall as I entered into that Matrix time, just before my foot touched down on the roof of the building, I felt my rope stretch because of the weight of my body on the end of the rope and the hard brake that helicopter pilot was doing. I could feel the rope stretch. I could hear it stretch even through my Kevlar helmet. And so that moment, as it was, 2 or 3 seconds that turned into 2 or 3 minutes of that frozen in the air, about to touch my boot on a roof with all of the stuff that I was wearing. It was a magical moment that I can still see in my mind's eye of, there's nothing crazy about it. It was the confluence of many moments that had got me to that point of all the skills required to be frozen in midair, as it were.
It's amazing. I can picture how you were saying that, like just coming out, just the physics, and you're just like, and then land, and then it's just go time. Stack up, hit the door, whatever, and boom, boom, play the games inside. Yeah. Oh, wow. That was amazing. Thank you. How do you expect special operations community to adapt over the next maybe 10 to 15 years? Are there any skill sets that you see that maybe it's not quite there yet, but it will be a requirement just for be able to continue on fighting the bad guys at such a high level?
That's a great question. No one's ever asked that before. I've never really considered it. But the first thing that comes to mind is I do believe information technology front or the high-end equipment front, either digital interactions with an opposing force. So that might be jammers, that might be, well, it could be all kinds of things. But I think that even though the modern tier 1 warrior is playing with all of the toys right now, has all of the stuff that they require, I think over the next 10 years, we're going to see a more technologically incorporated battle space, which means that at the tier 1 level, it won't be quite half man, half cyborg, but I think that there'll be a lot more interaction with heading towards that almost singularity of human warrior and digital warrior interface.
Well, you can definitely kind of see that now with the autonomous like drones and tanks and things that like, oh, the mule that's going to carry the kit. And then there's going to be something overhead that is, helping with surveillance and making sure nobody's sneaking up on you. How long do you think it'll be maybe till there's real integration with an Iron Man-like suit for, helping to carry the loads, the weight, all the other things that are going to come from it? Because I've been seeing some of the stuff with like the British. I mean, I'm a big Warhammer 40K nerd fan, and it almost looks like Assault Marines where they're just coming from one boat, going over the water, landing on another one, and then just playing playing the games. Do you see it almost just starting to happen more and more quickly where you're like, oh my, he's doing this and they're doing that, and like that the community might almost have to get bigger because of the specialties where you're going to need a cyber warfare guy who's going to know all that stuff. You're going to need the person who can do that assault marine kind of thing there. There's going to be such craziness that there is a limit to what each operator can learn. Do you think that's going to be a challenge too, maybe, where the community is going to have to try and dig deeper and find those people that can push that grit, that have that ability to become part of that tech?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. And I think we're all heading in that inevitable direction. It's simply a matter of time. And so to your point, if I play out an imaginary military, let's call it 40 years from now, I think that it'll kind of look like this. You join in basic infantry, and you're a basic infantry robot exoskeleton with not a lot of bells and whistles, not a whole lot of capability. It will be a mechanized version of what line infantry does right now. And so that's where you're going to cut your chops. That's where you're going to learn how to do the job. And as you progress in your career, you're going to start evolving and specializing until you're a tier 1 exoskeleton, which has all of the bells and whistles, which has all of the hovering in front of your face heads up display, whereas the line infantry won't have all of the bells and whistles. So I think everyone will evolve in that profession based on, you start from square one of your basic infantrymen and work your way up, just as we all have, towards tier 1, and things get bolted onto us as we head up the chain,
As the military likes to say, modular. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about the special operations community?
Oh, that's a good question. Biggest misconception? I think it's probably, there's several. And I think the several misconceptions are simply based on there's very little information out there about us. So the special operations community, particularly tier 1, is quite secretive, and therefore, I haven't said anything today that would expose any state secrets or anything that's given away anything. So we're quite particular, tend to be quite particular about how we talk and what we expose. I think maybe one of the biggest misconceptions is, I'll use myself as an example. It's almost a caricature of a Marvel movie where a tier 1 special operator is at least 6 feet tall, has a chiseled jaw, and weighs about 210 pounds. And when he's not being a competitive bodybuilder, he's a fighter pilot, and I'm 5'9" and I weigh 165 pounds, and that's kind of what I weighed when I was in the teams. And so I'm a short guy with not a whole lot of muscle on him, but yet somehow I managed to do all of the things that needed to be done. I can't fly a plane, but then no one ever asked me to fly a plane. And so I think the misconception is that the general public puts tier 1 special operations on a fantasy pedestal, that they don't understand tier 1 well enough to bring it down to a more realistic level, where it's just a dude like me leaning against a wall, not appearing to be impressive, not emanating laser beams through my eyeballs. I'm just going to lean against the wall and be a gray man in that moment. And so I think that's probably the opposite of the misconception out there, where tier 1 are almost like high flying football stars or soccer stars or celebrities that just kind of glide in on a silky parachute, land perfectly on one foot, and the red carpet gets rolled out. What a tier 1 person is, and it's only men in tier 1, what a tier 1 guy is someone who's come up from day 1 in the trenches, learned the craft over a long period of time, got the skill sets that they need, and then are tested on the daily within the job through extreme accountability. And it doesn't matter if you're 5'9" or 6'9", as long as you can do the job, that's all that matters. So again, the broad ranging tier 1 operator looks radically different from man to man to man. And some you'd be able to pick out as obvious tier 1 if you saw them in a crowd, and some you'd just never know.
In your opinion, what do you think causes people to quit selection? I mean, they've gone through so much to get picked, to even get slotted on that course. Is it that people think it's mostly all physical? But I'm going to guess that that gets broken very early on within selection, and it goes into a mental game. And if it is the mental game, is there things people can do to train for that? Or is it more of just something that you're built with and it can be kind of polished a little over the years with great mentors, but it's either in you or it's not in you to be a tier one operator?
Well, that's a great question. And I don't think anyone has cracked the code on that, because if they had, there'd be a book about it called The Magic Secret Sauce. But there is some secret sauce in there. And I don't want to get into it. And even if I could get into it, I probably wouldn't do it the justice that it deserves about the secret sauce. But special operations require special people, and there's special characteristics and traits that are required to be successful in that particular, very unique and special role in Tier 1. And beyond the special traits and characteristics, I think that maybe the biggest cause of success versus failure in selection is not how fit you are. If you show up able to do 200 push-ups in a row without even blinking, I'm going to ask you to do 201 or whatever. I'll find a way to break you physically. That's a non-factor. That's easy to do. But it's in the moment when someone is breaking physically or mentally or emotionally. It's that moment that I'm looking for as a directing staff on a selection. I'm looking for their why. Why are they staying in the game, or why are they getting out of the game? One of the things that a person can do before they show up is have a very strong sense of their why. Because without that strong sense, which you'll have to rely on countless times throughout selection, without that, don't even hop on the plane to fly out there and get tested. There's no point in showing up if you're unclear on your why.
When it comes to adventures, what is it now that you're, because I can't see just so much excitement within some of the things that you've done in your career. What are some of the things that you like to kind of keep doing just to get a little bit of that adrenaline rush going that maybe you don't get to feel quite as much because you're not jumping out of planes with a full kit and then going sneaking behind somebody's house and they don't know what you're doing yet? What do you do now to keep that thrill going?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you know what? It's actually a problem, because one of the things that you learn within that particular career path of heading towards Tier 1 is it really reinforces your adventurous spirit. Like, you've got to be an adventurer, man. In fact, the British SAS, 22 SAS, they were formed on that idea of being pilgrims and seeking. And so I've always been a seeker. I love adventure. I love seeking new things, new experiences, new tastes, new sounds, new smells. It's what makes me a bit of a foodie as well. I love exploring food to a degree where I find it exciting when I discover a new taste. So I think you've got to be a seeker in life. You've got to have an adventurous spirit to really take you further in life. And so for me, the adventures that I get into, of course, my wife and I just came back from 7 weeks overseas, where we went to Australia. I supported 2 national athletes, Canadian athletes, at a 24-hour solo world championship. And then from there, we went to Malaysia for a month, and then we went to Singapore for a couple of weeks, and then we went to Japan for a couple of weeks. So adventure in traveling, not over planning a trip, seeing where our noses take us, and kind of an adventure spirit. So that's certainly one way that I stay in the adventure game. Another way is I'm active through either mountain biking or through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Funnily enough, I just had my wife on the BJJ mats for, I think, her 3rd or 4th time ever, which is hilarious. And so I enjoy adventure through my own eyes, through doing rad things, but I also enjoy adventure through someone else's eyes. There's nothing more compelling to me than taking a noob or a newbie into a new adventure and helping mentor them through it, or shape them through it, or guide them through it, so that they're not seeing all the bumps and bruises, but they get 1 or 2, enough to learn the lesson in the moment to set them up for greater success in life. So to me, adventure is through my own eyes, but I also get to adventure through other people's eyes.
That's amazing. Yeah, I can. And there is that transition between being kind of the sometimes the doer and then becoming the mentor. And that just that joy of it's almost like when you have a kid and you watch them open the Christmas gifts and you get to experience that excitement again over the doll or the toy. Was there ever a course or qualification that just due to the training cycle not lining up, you always wanted, but you just never got to get? It just wasn't in the card.
No, I was pretty lucky, man. I don't know if I was lucky or it's a combination of many things, I suppose. But if there was a hard thing out there, generally speaking, I was on it. And if there was something that I wanted to do, generally it got done. So I was pretty blessed, maybe, to accomplish what I did in my military career. I mean, it was hard earned for sure. Again, certain things have to line up. And of course, you got to demonstrate that you're going to perform, that if someone is going to give you the shot at something, that you're not going to disappoint. So, that persistence, that consistency of effort, that no quit, all grit mentality, that's probably taken me a lot of places that I shouldn't have ever been in or accomplished or got loaded into. I guess my grit kind of gave me a one up.
Was there ever a course going into it you thought, I've got this, this is my game? And as soon as you got there, you went, oh, okay. And it humbled you for a bit. And the lessons, there was almost more of a lesson in the humbling than maybe the course's lesson plan in itself.
Yeah, it was definitely my Army sniper course, without a doubt. I mean, before I joined the Army, I'd been hunting I was hunting most days, every day growing up as a teenager out in the mountains. I was a pretty avid rabbit hunter or grouse hunter. I feel pretty comfortable grabbing my 22 caliber at the age of 13 and wandering out into the tree line for several hours and coming back at the end of the night. My parents didn't ever know where I was, and I was just out hunting rabbit. And so I was a good shot before I joined the military. And to that point, when I got out of basic training and got posted to our 1st Battalion, there was, within a matter of a day, there was a a brigade-wide shoot, a competition. With 22 calibers to see who the best shot in the brigade was. And I was literally a day out of basic training from Camp Wainwright. So I was a nobody. And I laid down and cracked out rounds. And it turns out, I shot such a tight group that the range NCO thought that I hadn't shot all of my rounds. So he made me do a reshoot, which no one else had to do. But I confirmed on the reshoot that I was the best shot in the brigade. And so from that point on, I had a bit of a reputation for being a good shot. So much so that in pretty short order, I was competing nationally out at Connaught, representing Army of the West. I thought I was a good shot. I really did before I went on to my sniper course. And I guess I am, or I was a good shot. But there's a whole lot more to shooting than just pulling the trigger as a sniper. And so it was a tough course that I faced multiple failures in, just like every freaking other guy who's ever attended that course and managed to survive it. It taught me how to manage failure through facing so much failure. It's probably the best gift that course ever gave me, was making me face the reality that I can't just natural my way through life. There's got to be ways to cope with failure.